video looks at the initial setup and the administration side of starting with Tracell and being able to make changes down the road. First thing I would do is go into our company, and I would set what your company name is. That will appear on all headers. Some of the address information may appear on some reports. The other important thing, prefixes you can leave as is. You won't really see those. The unit of measure is a very important thing to decide in the beginning, is whether you'll be tracking your products through receiving, producing, and production as metric or imperial. You'll need to pick one or the other, and you can't change that after the fact because you'll have data in the system that is metric and you can't start then doing imperial. The other thing to be cognitive aware of is that when you receive in kilograms or volume, weight, then you must consume in weight. If you receive in volume, then you want to consume in volume. So recipes must be set up like the product that you're receiving. All right, well, let's move on to, we're going to hit return main page and see our main page. Next important thing is to go into the administration tab. Here's where you would create your users and their roles. So you would go to your roles tab and see I have a few roles here already. I have the administrator, I have inventory control, orders and shipping, and receiving. Let's say I wanted to add a new role, and what can we call that? Let's call that recipe management. And just use that same name again, but you could put something a little bit longer in there if you needed to. And now I'm going to go into the menu here, and I can now say under recipe management, what am I allowed to do? Obviously, I need to be able to view my recipes. I need to be able to add, edit, and delete them. And perhaps you even want to give them the ability to add products as well and to edit them, because they kind of go hand in hand. The other thing they probably would also need is items. So an item is a generic thing that you use in a recipe. Let's say it's sugar or butter or a seed or any raw material, basically. And then in order to have items, you also would have suppliers. And I would say that that person might be able to view those suppliers to see who supplies that item. You may want to give them the ability to add items to suppliers. And that way you can, let's say, receive your sugar from more than one supplier. But when you go into recipes, you would just say that I use sugar, and the system will then track which one you used when you use it. So that's good there. We've got enough functions for that role. So now we would go over to our users. Let's create a new user. I'm just going to call it, let's say, Bob Smith is his name. And his role now is going to be recipe management. His login might be Bob Smith, B. Smith, and his password might be capital. Let's do that as his password. Let's save the new user. And I'm going to return to main just so you can see what would happen if I logged out and logged back in as the new user we just created. His password in there. And you can see now Bob only has a few, he has no day-to-day functions that are available to him. They're all dimmed out, but he can look at his items list. He can look at suppliers. He can add new material supplied. And he can do some recipe management. And he can create some products. Let's go back to the user that we have the ability to do all the roles for. Now it's very quick to just log off of one and onto the other one. So now you've seen how we could create users and roles. Within each user, you could disable them if you needed to, or enable them. You could edit something about them. Maybe you want to change their login or their password. And then or you could even change their role by just clicking in the arrow here and picking a different one. And then the same for the roles. You can go into a menu and you can edit that role, change the name if you want to, or change what's allowed. So mobile roles, there is the ability to do some functions on a Android tablet. We currently don't have many people using that feature, but same thing, you could create some roles and assign a mobile role to the user. Unit of measure. So throughout the system comes with some preset unit of measures. You can see that here with the word system. But if you want to add a new one, let's say you're going to be tracking things that are, let's say, um, maybe you want to call it seed. That, you don't want to say the word each, you want to say that they're a seed. Or maybe you wanted to track them as boxes. So it comes in a box. So I can save that new unit measure. It tells me I've added it. And you can see the word box. It's a customer identified unit of measure. And now when you create an item or a product, you can use that as one of your unit measures. Exception reason. This is things that you would see if you, let's say, used a raw material that is either out of date or it's not the one that's next in sequence with FIFO, then you could pick one of these reasons as to why you were doing that. Categories. These are categories you can come up with to help sort all of your production and inventory information. Sometimes your inventory can get very lengthy, so to be able to narrow it down by categories is very helpful. So if I want to add a new one, let's call it freezer, freezer goods, and I can apply it to just raw materials, or I can apply it to things that are produced. So I'm going to say that this is for raw material. The other thing, import data is really just used when you're starting the system and getting data from an existing source. Maybe it's an Excel or something like that. Company options are some things that we set for you in the background. So if you're looking for a function you don't have, you might want to look here and say, oh, there is something I'd like to have on my system. And how do I go about getting that? Well, just give us a call and we'll put that in there for you. We just want to make sure that if you're aware of how that feature works and don't want you just setting them without knowing that. Activity log is a log of actions, things like if you change a customer or you change a recipe or a product, it kind of tracks what's being done there. PDF files, if you are going to be using things like SOPs or maybe some standard documents that can be used across different products or items, you could upload a PDF here. So let's say it's an SOP in this case, and my document name is C prep for production. My SOP, I'll use the same description here, and then I can go and choose a file. So if I go over and pick a file, and let's just pick there we go, SOP here, a PDF, and say open, and save. The file has been successfully added, and I can view that. I can go over here and view that. So the one that we just added is the prep one. So there I can view it. I can also print it if I want it or save it somewhere else. Many things. Or I can edit and replace it with a different document. And it keeps track of when you've replaced that document so you know you have the most recent. You can create different PDF types. Maybe you want to have your own type of document, and so that when you add a new one there, then you can use that as your default type. then schedule tasks. If you have a scheduler enabled, you can add some new tasks. The tasks that are currently set up are a backup. This will schedule a backup that is regularly occurring, that or maybe a capture inventory, so it takes a snapshot of your inventory maybe once a month prior to your month end, that kind of thing, or prior to an inventory count. Cancel out of there. And then attributes are things that you can add to items and products. So let's say I wanted to add an attribute class for a material. It doesn't matter whether it's a material or a product. And maybe my attribute is taste. And I can add a list of values that can be, so that this will help me. Let's see, these flavor and taste are similar, but that's okay. So let's say it's a sweet taste, or it's a sour taste. I can close that, and then I could assign that attribute to a product or a raw material, and it can help me decide, what I want to include in a recipe based on my attributes. Or if I'm looking to sell a product, and the customer wants something sweet or savory, sour, you can be able to select using those attributes. Allergens. Allergens are things that you can add to an item. And we have a pretty long list here, but maybe you have your own. Maybe you want to say the allergen is gluten, and this description is contains gluten. Save that allergen. And now on a raw material, you can add that contains that allergen, and then you can avoid using that item in a recipe when you're making a product. Okay, so we'll stop there for the administration, and then we'll go on to the next thing with the next video. All right, thank you.